Basic sponge cake. Hi, I'm Anupa and I welcome you to Sanjeev Kapoor Khazana and a warm welcome to a series of cooking for beginners. Now what are we going to do today? Let's do a sponge cake. A very basic sponge cake is what I'm going to show you today, and once you have mastered the art of making a sponge cake, you can make a very good cake for your birthday as well. Not just birthday, for any other kitty party. With this basic recipe of a sponge cake, you can make cupcakes, you can make muffins, you can do a lot of variations like I always tell you. So let's start making a sponge cake. For sponge cake, I have very few ingredients in front of me. What all do we need? We need refined flour, we need eggs, butter, sugar, vanilla essence. Okay, now so to begin with, there are 2 to 3 things that you have to do before you start doing any kind of baking. First thing is you have to preheat your oven to the set temperature that is mentioned in your recipe. So in our case, our recipe needs oven to be preheated at 180 degrees Celsius. So I have already done that. You have to make sure for this kind of a baking you need a convection oven. If you have an OTG, which is oven toaster grill, it's fine. If you have a microwave, so you will need a convection mode in that. So in case of a microwave, you will have to preheat it to 180 degrees Celsius, and by the time your batter is ready, your oven also would have been very well preheated. So very important rule in baking is to preheat the oven first. After that is that we have to grease our baking tray. Second thing most important is greasing. Greasing is basically whatever cake tin that you're using, you have to make sure that you grease it very well with some amount of fat. Now fat could be in form of butter, it could be oil, it could be pure ghee, whatever that you have at home. Since our recipe demands butter, so I am sure you'll use butter. So I'll use the same butter and I will grease my cake tin. What I'm going to do is, I have a spring bottom cake tin, which means the bottom comes off. Why I like to use this is because it becomes very easy for me to demold the cake. If you don't have a spring bottom cake tin, that's fine, use whatever that you have. Nowadays a lot of silicone cake tins are also available. If you're using that, then in that case you don't need to grease the cake tin at all. Since I'm using a very basic cake mold, I will have to grease it. So just some butter on the base like this. Be little generous here. After that, set it in. And make sure you apply butter on the sides generously. This is basically for the cake to not stick, and it should come off easily. Once the cake is baked, it should come off easily. That is the reason we have to grease the cake tin. So this is done. Now after we've done this, second most important thing is to dust some flour. Like this, you take excess flour. Okay, so this is done. The cake tin is greased and ready. We'll keep this on a baking tray. The reason that we have done a dusting of flour over butter is for the same reason that this comes off easily. Sometimes what happens is that the butter that we have applied on the sides gets incorporated into the cake batter while baking, so which may also stick. So that is why, to ensure that it doesn't stick at all, we also dust flour on the sides as well as the bottom. So the cake tin is ready, the oven is getting preheated. So now let's start with the actual preparation of a sponge cake. The recipe that I'm using right now will take about 4 eggs. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to beat eggs. A lot of recipes initially say that you have to cream butter and sugar together. That's actually the right way of doing it, but since I am using an electric beater, what I am going to do is I am first going to beat the eggs. Why? I'll tell you. For a very simple reason that I save out on time. What happens actually is that when you beat eggs, the beater blades have to be absolutely clean. If any form of fat or butter is stuck to the blades, the eggs will not beat well, because to beat eggs well, you need your beaters to be very clean. So there's one way that you can do is the way that I'm doing it today, or after beating your sugar and butter, you can clean the blades very well, wipe it dry and then start beating the eggs. But like I say, this takes in a lot of efforts and time. So the better way out is to beat the eggs first, and you can use the same blades to beat the sugar and butter. So this is something that I have learnt over my experience, and I thought that's the best way one should do. So I am sharing it with you. In the eggs we are adding vanilla essence, because vanilla essence will actually take away the excess eggy flavor that you would get in the cake. Okay, now what we've done is we've added vanilla essence, and now we'll beat this. And the beating needs to be done till the eggs double in volume and it forms ribbons. What do I mean by ribbons? Basically, in most of the recipes you will read that beat the eggs till ribbon stage. So what is ribbon stage is what I'll show you today, but beating eggs will take about 8 to 10 minutes. So within 10 minutes you will have nice good egg ribbons, and that is when you have to stop beating, because further that will overbeat the eggs, and that is not how we want for our sponge cake. Eggs can be beaten to various stages, but this recipe requires eggs to be beaten at ribbon stage. So we need to stop there. So just keep on mixing this. A lot of chefs or people say that eggs have to be beaten with a beater like this, as in you have to go in one motion only. I somehow don't agree with that, because whenever that I have done it both ways, it has really not made a difference to the eggs. So you could go both ways, like this or like this, as long as you are beating it at a set speed. So I have kept my speed at 3. So that is what I'm doing. Now you see, within 2 minutes this entire thing has beaten so well. But this is still not what we want. We have to beat it even further. Okay, so you see this? Now when I lift up the egg, it is forming ribbons. So this is what I mean by ribbon stage. And now we need to stop the beating of eggs. Why is it that we have to beat eggs so much? Is because a lot of air which gets entrapped in the eggs, and that is what makes your cake nice and fluffy. It's not just the eggs, we are also going to be beating sugar and butter, and apart from that we are not adding any leavening agent in this, whether it is baking powder or baking soda. We are not adding any of that. It is just the eggs, sugar and butter which will give us a very nice good spongy cake. So after this we will now beat sugar and butter. So first we will take the butter. To this we will add sugar. I am using grain sugar. Now, like I said, I am going to use the same blades to do this, but if you were to do this first, then you would have to clean your blades and make it dry, and only then you could beat the eggs. So isn't it better to first beat the eggs and then blend the sugar and the butter? So now at a lower speed you have to start, because the grain sugar is quite big in size and it may just splutter. So after you have mixed it, we need to gather it once again in the bowl and beat it again. So like this. We have to beat this for at least 2 to 3 minutes till you feel that the mixture has gone nice and fluffy. So slowly on low speed you need to beat this. The cake that I am making today is a white sponge cake. If you add cocoa powder to this, it will be chocolate cake. But in that case, the amount of flour will have to be reduced, and that reduced quantity will have to be replaced with cocoa powder. For example, if you were to use 100 grams of flour, then in that case, we would use 75 grams of flour and 25 grams of cocoa powder, which would give us a chocolate cake. So it's just the same formula. Like I always say, once you have mastered the art of making one recipe, you will be able to make at least 30 other variations with that one recipe. So if you learn how to make a basic sponge cake, you can make a basic chocolate cake, you can put fruits in that, you can put chocolate chips in that, you could do so many things. Okay, so this is done. Now the only thing that we have to do is mix, and mixing is again very important. First thing is that we'll just gather all of this together. You see the mixture has become very light yellow because of the air that has got incorporated in it, but there's a lot of air in the egg mixture, so we have to lightly mix this. But prior to that we have to sieve the flour, so that will be done directly in this bowl. Sieving also incorporates air. At the same time we also sieve off anything that is not so good present in the flour. There could be some form of grain or something that is not good. So after we have done this, sieve this, and now we'll add the egg mixture to this. First we'll add half of it, because if you over mix, then whatever air has got trapped in will surely escape. So first we'll mix half the batter. What am I doing is cut and fold. So I'm cutting and I'm folding. So this is the only way you can incorporate the flour into this mixture. Yeah, like this. When it comes to mixing the flour, do not use the beater. You will have to use a spatula. And now let's add the egg mixture. Okay, now that we're mixing this, now is the time to add the milk. Milk is something which is very subjective, as in it depends upon your batter, how thick the batter is, but I would advise at least about half a cup of milk to go into this mixture. Okay, so as you mix, you fold and the batter is done. Our cake tin is also ready. Whenever you pour a batter in a cake tin, it should be half full because of the leavening agents that we've added. In this case, it's the egg. The cake is sure to rise. So my batter is half full and now we'll put this in the oven. In about 20 minutes, we'll check if the cake is done. Since this is a small cake, it should not take more than 25 to 30 minutes. In case if it doesn't get baked within 30 minutes, you may have to check every 2 to 3 minutes, but that will not happen. By 30 minutes, your sponge cake will be done. Okay, so after about 25 minutes, I've got the cake out of the oven. And one thing I would like to tell you here is how do you check if the cake is cooked from within? First thing is either you could touch it like this. If it springs back, which means, or it feels firm, which means the cake is done. Another thing is with the help of a toothpick, you just have to pierce here like this and get it out. You see the toothpick is clean. If the cake was raw from within, there would be batter stuck to the toothpick here. But in this case, it is not the case. It is clean, which means the cake is absolutely cooked from within. Now all that we have to do is to demold the cake. So to demold the cake, first thing that you have to do is take a knife and the cake tin, since it's hot, use a mitten or a kitchen towel and just loosen it from the sides like this. It's very important to loosen the cake. Although we have greased it, it will not stick, but it's better to loosen the sides like this. Once you've done that, okay, so now what we'll do is we'll take a small bowl and upturn it. Keep your cake tin on this and your cake will automatically slide down. So now all you have to do is pick this up and keep it down. That's it. Now with the same knife, just that's it. The cake is done. We'll slice it. You see this? This is still hot, but the cake is very clean. No air pockets, perfectly done. We'll now cut this into wedges like this. One thing I forgot to mention in the beginning is that after you get the cake out of the oven, do not demold it immediately. The cake is very hot, so you may get burnt. And secondly, let it stay in the cake tin for at least 15 minutes. Let the cake settle down well, and after 15 minutes, you can actually demold it. So by then, you're able to handle the cake the way I was doing it right now. And you need not be in a hurry to demold the cake. As it is, you shouldn't be cutting a cake which is very hot. So let it be for 15 minutes at room temperature. The temperature will come down and then you can demold and cut the cake like this. I have cut wedges like this. You can cut them into slices and store it in a nice airtight container. Do not cut the cake and keep in the refrigerator because it will go slightly hard. This cake has a shelf life of about 3 to 4 days. After 4 days, it may not taste very good, but about 4 days it stays fine. I'm sure if you make a cake like this, it will not last for more than a day. Within a day, it will be over. I would advise you to not keep this in the refrigerator and leave it out at room temperature. It will stay fine. So this is a very basic vanilla sponge cake which I have shown you. As I also mentioned in the beginning, that if you were to try out a chocolate cake with this, you can replace some amount of refined flour with cocoa powder, and that will be just fine as long as you keep the quantity same. For example, if 100 grams of refined flour is what you're using in this cake, you can replace it with 25 grams of cocoa powder. So which means you will have 75 grams of refined flour and 25 grams of cocoa powder. So that will give you a chocolate cake. So after you're done with this, you can top it up with whipped cream, you can top it up with just plain melted chocolate, garnish it with some chocolates or anything that you wish to. So once you know how to make a good basic sponge cake, you can make various other cakes. So right now, observe this recipe, definitely try it at home, and I'm sure by the end of it, you'll be very proud of yourself.